Day 879 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 568,000 military personnel losses, which adds an additional 1,220 in the past day. Then as for hardware losses, 4 tanks, 20 APVs, 57 artillery, 2 MLRS platforms, and 1 air defense system. And I cannot stress enough how truly finite these systems are. Each and every one of them is a devastating loss, but a bit more on that shortly when I show you that latest loss. Then headed to the map, almost on the very edge of Russian territory, as there were very recent reports of a drone attack on a train ferry in the port of Krasnodar, causing the vessel to catch fire. The governor of the Russian region came out pretty quickly to blame Kyiv for the event, although Ukraine's main intelligence directorate, or the HUR, which regularly takes credit for drone attacks on Russian targets, very much denied actually having anything to do with this latest incident, suggesting that it might have actually been as a result of some self-inflicted causality instead. And these things do happen from time to time. Then, with a slight change of pace, but still within Russia, as amid the backdrop of recent power outages in various regions throughout the country, Russian State Duma member of Parliament Alexander Gurilev has issued a stark warning to his countrymen, advising them to prepare for potential heating shortages in the upcoming winter. And this, of course, actually marks a significant shift from previous rhetoric that focused on Europe's energy vulnerabilities. So Gurilev's recommendation was for Russians to stockpile firewood, even those living in urban residential buildings. That is one bleak outlook for Russia's upcoming self-assessed winter concerns. Plus, Russians and firewood in residential buildings. What could possibly go wrong? And what Gurilev appeared to really suggest was for residential building dwellers to obtain their own wood stove and piping, with coal as well, for some sort of makeshift apartment installations. Just imagine self-installed wood stoves in every subdwelling that also happens to drill massive holes through the walls for piping exhaust. Insurance rates would go skyrocketing for those buildings. And yet, all of this just seems like fixing the symptoms to a much larger problem at hand. Then headed into the Ukrainian map today, as Ukrainian forces shot down a Russian Su-25 attack aircraft in the Donetsk region, and a major Russian aviation-linked Telegram channel confirmed the shootdown, which happened right there in the belly of the beast, and the channel had stated that the single pilot survived, which appears accurate from the chute that we can see right there. The Russian jet was also paired with another Su-25 jet, being the commonly known wingman standard practice. So all in all, this is now the second Su-25 downed by the very same 110th Separate Mechanized Brigade this month. Reports didn't indicate what was used to shoot down the jet, but it was clearly a ground-launched, shoulder-fired man-pad system of some kind, with those systems coming in very useful when enemy aircraft fly low to avoid radar detection from the longer-ranged and more formidable anti-aircraft systems like that of the Patriot or NASAMS. Then headed to the north of the Ukrainian map today, as Russia has reportedly deployed additional assault units near Heliboka, close to the border in the Kharkiv Oblast, to prepare for offensive operations. Heliboka is 7 kilometers or about 4 miles from the Russian border, with very few roads to get in there and to support Russian troops with. Either way, it appears that Russia is continuing to double down right here and save face as best they can. Then right next door to Vovchansk, where Russian soldiers have posted on social media the poor and hostile conditions that they face, stating that flies are buzzing around everywhere, along with fallen comrades, and the staggering losses he reported as well, as his company or unit started out with 300 personnel, and now it's just down to him. Then 30 men came to replenish, but from that addition, there are now just 10 left. And this is all a part of Russian military design, really, as it works to try to overmatch Ukrainian positions with pure manpower mass. And yet it's such an attritional method for the smallest of gains, which Russia is not even making in this sector for some time now. Then on the map, I'll quickly sneak back over the border as it was noted that Russian aviation mistakenly dropped another munition in the Belgorod region. Perhaps the cautiously pessimistic pilot heard yesterday's news about the latest Patriot battery delivery, leading to the initiation of an early drop release. Then also within the Russian Oblast, Putin's updated goal of a sanitary zone right beyond the border is continuing to expand its presence, though doing so on the Russian side, which is exactly the opposite of what Putin had hoped for. As take for instance Murom, a town of 1,500 residents is now completely empty due to Putin's failed Kharkiv offensive. Residents abandoned the town, complaining that no one protected them. And that would be very bad local press for Putin, but the message of course won't reach any state-controlled media airwaves. Then headed further down on the map as Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky reported that Russian forces continue to advance towards Pokrovsk, despite suffering heavy casualties. As following the capture of Avdiivka in February, Russia has intensified attacks across multiple sections on the Eastern Front, and then gaining ground ferociously, or at least that's what pro-Putinists would have you think. Because when taking a much more objective and zoomed out approach to territory of control, we see that Russian forces were sitting on exactly 18% of Ukrainian land control right at the point of the Avdiivka town being taken 6 odd months ago. And so since then, the Russian MOD will more or less have to agree that in the 6 months preceding that, they've captured only about 0.12% of Ukrainian land since then. That's right, about 1/10%, as they currently hold 18.12% right now. And what for? Was it worth it? Well, aside from the aforementioned attritional meat waves, we've also seen Russia start to transition their army away from the more traditional to the ever-growing, bizarrely makeshift, with the introduction of golf buggies and motorcycles in that short space of time, which is very short in the grand scheme of things, as Russia's heavy and light armor in the past has all too often been used with a quantity approach as opposed to a tactical quality approach. With all of this having led to the ongoing mass demilitarization of the Russian military. And then so looking at some more Russian demilitarization, we'll take a look around on the map because somewhere in the east, a HIMARS strike by the AFU took out the newest Russian Yastreb AV electronic intelligence, electronic countermeasure and counter-battery radar system. These systems aim to detect, analyze and jam enemy communications, radar and other electronic signals to disrupt adversary operations. Then also in the east, a pilot from the Belgorod unit drops an incendiary round from an FPV drone into a Russian quad bike, and that's not something we see every day. Then also, very impressively, was the destruction of the Russian Tor M2 air defense system in the vicinity of occupied Donetsk, after quite literally being followed around by a Ukrainian drone which relayed the coordinates back to the artillerists. So these platforms are an all-in-one system with integrated radar and launch system, and are capable of detecting, tracking, and engaging a wide variety of aerial threats, at least as per the spec sheet. And just like I was telling you earlier in this video, I cannot tell you enough how truly finite these systems really are. Each and every one of these is a devastating and almost certainly an irreplaceable loss as well. Because to gain the overwhelming advantage in modern warfare, air superiority is crucial, so neutralizing air defense systems of the adversary is key. And then lo and behold, Putin's military keeps resupplying the occupied regions with replacement air defense systems by depleting existing inventories. As Putin and the MOD is just inadvertently handing these targets across to Ukraine on a silver platter, one by one. Then headed across to some news for today. So Joseph Borrell, the European Union's top diplomat, announced that Ukraine is set to receive the first 1.5 billion euro transfer from frozen Russian assets in early August. This initial payment is earmarked for acquiring critical military equipment, including air defense systems, artillery, and ammunition. The funds are part of a larger initiative by the EU to utilize windfall profits from the frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine's defense and reconstruction efforts. EU ambassadors previously agreed to this plan on May 8th it was, with expectations of providing Ukraine approximately 3 billion euros annually. Now, an outright seizure of the 300 billion euros or so of frozen Russian assets may occur in the future, but for now, Russia is starting to pay some of its fair share in military aid funding to Ukraine so that Ukraine can use it against, well, Russia. Thanks, Russia. Then we'll head across to another Russian hardware update, as due to this latest in-field photo update, scene of a destroyed Russian M46 howitzer, it appears that Russia is getting into full swing with the reactivation of this barely post-World War II towed artillery piece, with development commencing in 1946 and production in the early 50s. Now, somewhat problematically, these ancient barrels utilize the lesser-known and much more rare 130mm artillery shells. Although, after sourcing a supplier for that caliber from the likes of North Korea, Russia is reactivating these, or should I say re-reactivating these, because after pulling out half a dozen or so of these pieces last year, Russian artillerists reportedly found them to be a horrible choice of a platform. Poor performance, inaccurate, and just flat out dangerous for the artillerists that use them. So, although Russia has now sourced a large supply of what is likely to be very old North Korean shells of very questionable quality, the use of these antiquated howitzers is far from ideal, as Russian hardware desperation is continuing to reach all new highs. Then, in the spirit of what I just said, let's move across to a funny to round it all off for today, guys. So, evidently, we've come to see from a Russian Telegram channel of the 1195th Motorized Rifle Regiment, putting on display the addition of their latest Russian assault vehicle. A bicycle with a small displacement two-stroke engine kit installed on it. I mean, really? Is this where they're really at in the Russian army now? A 30 to 60cc DIY mountain bike engine kit purchased from the Chinese Temu platform for about $100? Clearly there is no level that this army won't stoop to. Although, hey, these guys better watch out, because that blue throttle cable combined with the black and yellow color of the bike frame is running dangerously close to looking like pro-Ukrainian colors. So thanks again for watching, guys. Please continue to like and comment. Thanks for helping out the channel with reaching that 110k subscription mark as we continue to spread these lovely messages about Putin and his autocratic regime. So thanks again, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!